Hey everybody, welcome to the Family Fright Night Horror Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Will. Today we're doing our third reading. Today I'm joined by Thomas R. Clark, author of Immoral Dilemmas and several other books. He is also going to be my table partner at Scares That Care coming up,
And TBR Con.
and TBR Con. Tommy, how
That's
you
right.
doing?
I'm hanging in there. I'm holding on to a book that I just made.
Yeah, there we go. Love that cover.
Yeah, this is the first cover that I ever made. I made it 6 years ago. That's how long ago I've wanted to put this book out or write this book or whatever. Um, and it evolved. It got better over time. The original draft of it wasn't as nice as this, but pretty proud of that cover, man. Graphic design. It's a amateur hobby for me.
Sweet. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. So introduce us to your story and then get into the reading.
Okay. So, I'm going to be reading my story that's in Harvested, since I got my contributor copy today. And also because the story that's in this, The Weird Sisters of 313 on Inverness Lane, or Inverness Ave rather, is kind of instrumental to me. Anybody that's read my story Subrica a la Mode that's in Brandonomicon 2 and is also in Immoral Dilemmas knows that I really love my character Elaine Buffett and her husband Ted, who I introduced in my book Summerhome. They're basically Ed and Lorraine Warren, except they're not full of shit. So, Sobriquet a la Mode is a story that features the Elaine Buffett. And my story in Harvested, The Weird Sisters of 313 Inverness Ave, is my attempt to do a found footage short story. And the way I did it is as a transcript of somebody watching an unproduced, unreleased episode of The Parahunters, which is Ted and Elaine's TV show. So, where is it in this? Oh, here it is, right in the beginning. All right. So, the Weird Sisters of where's the guys? Damn, you can't see the text. There it is. The Weird Sisters of 313 Inverness Ave. True Creepy Stories is proud to present a transcript and verbal interpretation of this reporter's viewing of Season 19, Episode 9, 19-9, of the Parahunters television program, produced by Samantha Thompson, hosted by J.D. Thompson, and starring the world-famous, trademark, Parahunters, Theodore and Elaine Buffett. Recorded pre-pandemic on Halloween night 2019, the episode The Weird Sisters of 313 Inverness Ave has remained unaired, a result of the criminal investigation surrounding the property and this television production. Public demand for the episode's release has increased since the sudden deaths of J.D. Thompson and Samantha Thompson. Readers may be unaware of the father and daughter passing away during their 2022 joint investigation of the Summerhome assisted living facility and Donahue Furniture Warehouse in Fenton, New York. This blog is dedicated in part to their memories, as well as the victims of the tragedies related to this episode still unfolding in Ulster County and Kingston, New York at press time. Editor's note, due to the ongoing criminal investigation, some of the names in this transcription, in particular the young victims of Harold John Gilman, have been changed to protect the identities of the families desiring privacy during their continued time of mourning. Ernie. Opening segment. We hear the familiar chords of the wave synth overture of the Parahunters, warbling from A sharp to high E and back, an unsettling mashup reminiscent of the Twilight Zone and Doctor Who themes. The camera focuses on shifting images of Halloween pop culture icons until it settles on video footage of children trick-or-treating. If you believe the folk stories, every town or village across the United States of America seems to have that one house. The one I'm talking about. It's a solitary building, ramshackle and run down. Keen observers will note the property is avoided by animals and by trick-or-treating children on Halloween. Hello, I'm your host, J.D. Thompson, with Ted and Elaine Buffett, and this, why, my dear friends, it's the Parahunters. The opening stock footage runs, showing highlights of past investigations alongside the typical credits. The montage flips through the images of infamy covered in season 19, much of which was filmed in upstate New York. A scene from their episode 19-20 interview with serial killer Patrick Dermody flashes by. The video morphs into past investigations, the Sarah Woods disappearance in episode 19-2, the Foothead slasher covered in episode 19-12. They all fade into images of Amityville's most famous haunted house, visited in episode 19-1, and so on before fading to black. JD speaks over the visuals. This week we have a treat for you, saved from last year when we visited upstate New York during Halloween. And when I say this goes places you never thought it would, it's true. All you need for affirmation of this case is to turn on your television for the evening news. Hidden deep in the wilderness of the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, the home of terror treats, both imagined and real, is the city of Kingston. Who can forget the fictional Headless Horseman, or the all-too-real Balloon Boy killer? Near the edge of the city line is Inverness Ave, and at the end of this street is a house, number 313. Yes, it's Kingston's edition of the creepy house down the lane. The property is occupied by Verily, Iviana, and Alexandra, the Katzberg sisters. And unlike other such residents, those avoided by children seeking candy, the Katzbergs will have plenty of visitors on this night. The accompanying visuals show footage of the sisters going about their daily mundane chores. The sisters remember every Halloween. How can they forget it? The last night of October, when the hag's cries carry on the wind, and the last of the leaves are torn from the tree branches. The full moon hangs high, and the witching hour falls upon the land. Skeletal tree limbs cast crooked shadows in the lunar light, pointing to the other side of the veil. Somewhere between the worlds of the living and the dead, an umbral gateway opens, and the damned skitter forth. As dusk falls, the first of many knocks will come upon their door. That's the dogs in the background you hear. Thank you. As dusk falls, and the first of many knocks will come upon their door, they're as reliable as the changing seasons, or when an arthritic joint aches with a dip in the barometer. But this year it will be different from those in the past. The pair hunters will be the Katzberg's guests, joining the sisters to greet their All Hallows Eve's tricksters. The camera turns its attention to the youngest sister. It happened. It started happening so long ago, but he's just accepted it as always being this way, Verily Katzberg says. But it's gotten to the point now where we've had to reach out to someone for help. We're not necromancers, you know. The woman points a shaky liver-spotted hand at Elaine. Not like you. Oh, no, we're not, Theodore. Ted Buffett answers and corrects his words. I mean, you made the right call, but no, we're not necromancers. I think you mean is medium, someone who can speak to the spirits of those on the other side. A necromancer talks to the dead or raises the dead. Aren't they the same thing? Ivana asks. No, not at all. I don't have any power except knowledge, as I just showed, but my wife. Camera focuses on Elaine's face. Unlike other alleged mediums, Elaine truly is able to communicate with the deceased. Editor's note. Although Ted and Elaine profess their legitimacy, we must insist readers use their best judgment when accepting the Buffetts and their alleged abilities. Theodore indeed has a master's degree in anthropology from Cornell, which is a testimony to his knowledge. Elaine's claims of speaking with the dead, however, are unfounded. We must trust her integrity on the matter. Ted frequently uses the analogy of Harry Houdini in his crusade to find an authentic medium, claiming Harry never had the pleasure of meeting Elaine Buffett in the flesh. And speaking from personal experience, I can say Elaine is quite charming and convincing. If Houdini had met Elaine, according to Ted, my wife would have educated him. The dead will stick around for a year if their soul has a fetter, a bond that keeps them from moving on. Well, will stay around for years if their soul has a fetter, a bond that keeps them from moving on. But in the case of Houdini's mother, she would have given him bad news. Once the dead move on, they don't want to talk to us. Ernie. On the screen, sitting side by side, Ted and Elaine hold hands, each displaying concern for Verily and her sisters with their postures and facial expressions. That's right, sugar, Elaine adds. Don't you fret none. The world-famous parahunters are here to solve your problem. She places her hand on Verily's knee. The scene cuts to external view of 313 in Inverness Ave, panning out before fading to black for the first commercial break. When we return, the camera is focused on the outside of the house. The Parahunters production van is parked down the street. 313 Inverness Ave. The epitome of the house down the street all the kids avoid, J.D. Thompson's narration returns. But the residents of that creepy-looking house claim they do not get trick-or-treaters en masse, and they aren't necessarily from this world. Could they be coming from the other side? That's what the world-famous Parahunters will find out. The camera cuts to the home's interior where the trio of the Katzberg sisters is sitting side by side on an antique parlor sofa. And next to them, in chairs, are Ted and Elaine. Can you tell us when this began? Ted asks. Alexandra, the eldest of the sisters, answers first. I can't recall. It's always been this way. The numbers, good gosh, they grow and grow every year. Last year they knocked on the door until the sun rose. The venerable old woman's voice shakes as much as her frame as she speaks. And why do you think that is? Ted continues his questioning. That the numbers increase. Ivania answers this time, her words seethe with contempt. If we knew, do you think we'd be calling you? You're the pros at this. We're just. The words trail off to an undecipherable mumble. What's that? Ted pushes the issue, leaning forward with an ear and a raised eyebrow. You're just what? Oh, nothing. Never mind me. Ivania looks over the camera, then down on her lap and fidgets with her apron. Verily interjects. I think what she's trying to say is you folks have a reputation, as being experts in these sort of things, and we don't. Ted chews his lip, rubs his chin, and makes a note on the pad on his knee, then asks, how exactly do you make income? We're midwives. Alexandra answers for them. Thanks, Apple. Midwives? Elaine asks. Yes, midwives. Verily and Ivana repeat in unison. JD's narration takes over, and with scenes of black and white woodcuts and paintings showing childbirths in older days. The practices of the midwife and time-honored tradition in many countries, wherein the midwife assists another in giving birth. With the advent of modern medical technology and doctors, the midwife has, until recent years, fallen out of popularity. And, however, the stigma of the midwife, once vilified by both the church and medical community, has lived on. And midwives, through the negative propaganda spread about them, were looped into the same corrals as early female brewers. A bed of wave synth races under the narration. A graphic with a single word curls across the screen. Witch. Thanks, Apple. JD's narration bellows the word in slow motion and deep baritone. The images shift from childbirth to those of a more sinister nature, featuring demonic figures, witches burned at the stake, and black cats. The pictures blink in and out, going from sister to sister. The narration continues. Many midwives in the past were incorrectly persecuted as witches and hung, burned, or drowned as a result. But with the growing New Age movements of the 60s and 70s, throughout the last 60 years, we've seen an increase in the number of new mothers returning to seek the services of midwives and give birth over OBGYNs. The images are now modern representations of midwives exercising their craft at home and in hospitals. How long have you been doing this? Elaine asks the sisters. Since we came to the New World. Well, not us exactly, but our family. Some families are tailors, some are cobblers. The Katzbergs have always been midwives. It's what we do, Alexandra says. Even the men? Ted asks. What men? The sisters answer in unison. The Katzberg menfolk, what of them? Ted pushes the issue. Well, you must be mistaken, Alexandra adds. It's always been just us three sisters. Is that so? Ted asks. Sitting next to him, Elaine remains silent, chewing her lip, nodding. Aye, it be so, the eldest sister insists. JD's narration fills the viewers in on a little secret, a trademark plot device found in many episodes of The Parahunters. Regular viewers know we always vet the cases of the world famous Parahunters, except, and unlike less scrupulous demonologists and fortune tellers who leech and attach themselves to cases like ambulance chasing attorneys, we like to literally weed out the substance addicts, mentally ill, and child abusers. A photograph of a teenage boy and a birth certificate, the surname Katzberg highlighted. JD continues. Who is Harold John Katzberg? And how is he involved with the sisters at 313 Inverness Lane? We'll find out when we come back from this commercial break. Now, Harold John is crossed out. The screen fades from black, revealing that the photograph of the young Harold John Katzberg, his name highlighted in the birth certificate, comes into focus. A voiceover repeating the last conversation between Ted and the sisters, denying the existence of any men in the Katzberg genealogy, precedes JD's continued narrative. Who is or who was Harold John Katzberg? We're about to find out, or are we? Research by the world famous parahunters proved to be inconclusive with no school or medical records. Sometimes there's nothing left to do than confront the subjects with what we know, or they assume we might know. The camera pans to Ted and Elaine, still sitting with the Katzberg sisters. Producer Samantha Thompson hands Ted a manila folder labeled Secrets. He opens the folder, revealing the birth certificate and headshot. Editor's note: this is a common tactic used by reporters, myself included, to coerce information from the persons we are interviewing. Tip a little bit of your hand. Make them think that you know more than you do. In other words, bluff. Ernie. Sorry. So tell us about this, Ted says. Alexandra shakes her head in disgust, as does Verily. But Ivana sits in place, a tear in her eye. Does this mean something to you? I haven't, Ivania says, her words fading to a whisper out of earshot. You haven't what? Never mind. Ivania crosses her arms and turns her head from the photograph. Please, you weren't invited here for this. But weren't we? We have empathy. Is he dead? Ted asks. Dead? Is that what you think? Ivania cackles, opening her mouth wide, revealing the periodontal disease ravaging her gums and blackening the roots of her teeth. I certainly hope not, she adds. What do you mean? Ted is confused. He looks to his wife for advice on what to do. The camera pans to Elaine. She gave the boy up for adoption, silly. Another trademark line on the show that draws a chuckle from the present in the room. The three sisters nod in unison on the sofa, with Ivania in the middle, her siblings consoling her. So sorry, my husband is a brilliant man, Elaine continues, but sometimes he's a little heavy in his approach. We didn't come here to doubt you. We only want to protect the people in the case we cover. I'm sure you can understand that. Editor's note: Ted and Elaine played straight man and fall guy in the style of vaudeville acts like Abbott and Costello. Except they were both smart. Neither played stupid. Came across more as them being a team, sharing their knowledge and observations. This dynamic is part of the show's longtime appeal. Ernie. The camera pans back, capturing the sisters sitting next to Ted and Elaine. Smiles on everyone's faces. The camera starts fading when a knock on the door brings a collective gasp. When we come back, the first trick-or-treaters arrive. And what happens when they meet Elaine? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned to find out after this word from our sponsor. The music goes silent as we cut to the next set of commercials. Third sponsor break. The camera fades in from the commercial, and it is out of focus. Slowly, features come into view, revealing Elaine's face with the lighting coming from under her. This gives her an other earthly appearance, with shadows rising up and falling against her features. JD's narration continues. As our regular viewers are well aware, unlike most of the mediums, past and present, Elaine is the real deal. This is what makes the Parahunters world famous. If she'd lived during the times of Harry Houdini, he would have certified her as authentic. Mrs. Buffett falls into a trance-like state as she peers into that space between the living world and the afterlife, a place she calls her personal darkness. It's here that she can see and hear the dead. In our world, the dead can speak, but they cannot be heard. A pre-recorded narration from Elaine now plays. Only those rare individuals who can breach that barrier between realities, people like me, can hear the departed and the tales they tell. The camera changes to a long shot of the residence parlor and shows the Katzberg sisters still sitting on their clawfoot sofa, waiting for the first knock. After a few extended moments of moody music, the knock comes. Shit. Ah.
Yay!
I lost my spot. Oh shit. We're in the third sponsor break. Blah, 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 knock comes. What should we do? Verily asks, her voice trembling in sync with her body. Answer it like you would any other year, Ted says. The camera follows the youngest of the Catsburgs. Verily rises from the couch and approaches the door slowly with caution. The camera angle changes. Now we see the room from behind the sofa. We see Elaine sitting in an easy chair, her eyes closed and fluttering. Verily opens the door and runs back to join her kin. There is nothing behind the door except for the porch and the darkness covering Inverness Ave. The Catsburg sisters grow wide with fear. They shirk back on their sofa in terror, covering their eyes. Elaine gasps as we hear her speak. Ain't you a sweetie, Sugar Bean? Mrs. Buffett says to nobody. She reaches out with one hand, smiling the entire time. I love your costume. Editor's note. Typically, a 30-minute long episode of The Pair Hunters will include at least one reenactment of Elaine Buffett's visions. A small portion of post-production work, which includes the recreation of Elaine's visions at 313 Inverness Ave, has not been completed as of this publishing date. Please note, as an editorial reminder, the names of the innocent have been changed. Further reader discretion is advised. Ernie. Guess it's going to get deep now. Elaine gestures to the sisters. Ladies, this is Katie in her teddy bear costume. She's aware you can see her, but cannot hear her. The Catsburgs set nod in unison. She says you delivered her, and she thanks you for keeping her mother safe. Now, wait, hold on. What's that? What's that? What's that? Verily, Ivana and Alexandra ask in unison. Katie asks why you ignored them. Ignored who? Verily asks. Them, the departed. She tells me you've been ignoring them. That's not true, Verily interjects. She also wonders why you help them. A scowl covers Elaine's face. We've helped lots of people. Does she give any names? Alexandra asks. No, no. Elaine shakes her head. She only calls them, well, them. That is all. Such a sweet young thing. We carry on in the vessel we left this world in. This girl is far too young to have died, and it seems she was taken to us from us by them, the them she mentions. Such a tragic shame. God, Elaine's cadence sounds like Joe Lansdale. It really does. The camera closes in on Elaine's face. Her body language betrays her distrust of the Catsburgs. Another knock at the door brings similar results, JD's narration informs us, and this pattern continues through most of the night. Ghostly trick-or-treaters knocking on the door, thanking the sisters for aiding them in their natal deliveries, before shifting to angry revenants, questioning the motives of the sisters in their aid to them. Who are they? What did he do to these sisters? And what was the role played by the Catsburg sisters? It seems them and their identity are the secret of all your woes. Are you sure that you don't recall who he could be? Ted asks the sisters. Trio mumbles and kibitzes before shaking their head in response. Do you have no idea? Alexandra confesses. Well, someone has to know. A fierce knock at the door, much louder and repetitive than those heard before, interrupts Ted's interrogation of the sisters. The Catsburg siblings gasp in surprise. Perhaps this would give us our answers. JD's narration continues. Stay tuned, parabelievers, to find out. The soundtrack builds the crescendo and fades, then the screen fades to black. Fourth sponsor break. A post-production warning comes on screen. The following segment contains extreme violence. Some of what you are about to see is evidence of the criminal prosecution and murder trial of Harold John Gimlin. Continued viewer discretion is strongly advised. The camera is inside the house, focused on the sisters and Elaine. JD's narration continues. The Catsburg sisters of 313 Inverness Avenue in Kingston, New York, have retained the world-famous parahunters in an effort to discover the source of the home's bizarre yearly Halloween trick-or-treating. The revelation of an individual known as them has surfaced, leaving questions about his identity. And now a loud knock at the door has sounded, leaving the denizens of the property to wonder who it could be. The knocking is replayed, adding a percussion section to the program's wave synth soundtrack. The camera cuts back to the sisters, then to Ted and Elaine. The couple are holding hands while perplexed expressions cover everyone's faces. I'll get it, Verily says. She stands up and walks to the door, but before she reaches it, the door bursts open. Verily falls back and lands on the floor. Before anyone can say a thing, an explosion erupts in the room. An unexpected burst of fire briefly sends the cameras to white. The flare recedes, revealing a man standing in the open doorway, a double-barrel shotgun in his hand. The occupants of 313 and Varenus Ave scream from shock and awe. Before them, Verily's body lay on the floor, her upper body riddled with buckshot. A pool of blood is seen seeping out from her small frame. It spreads and soaks into the parlor's ornate rug. It's him! Oh no! Ivania screams. Harry, what are you doing? I can't have you running your mouths in the news, aunties. You stupid, redacted misogynistic word, the man declares. It's all we done to you for you, you ungrateful bastard! Alexandra spits on the floor. It splashes in Verily's cranial fluid and blood. But I'm your... Ivania never finishes her plea. The invader turns a shotgun on Ivania and Alexandra. Fire erupts from the barrel. One blast of the buckshot catches both sisters in their faces, ripping the flesh off and leaving behind skullish visages. The sisters' dead bodies lay back against the blood-soaked sofa. A crimson spray covers the wall behind them. The camera drops and falls on the floor, but continues to record, its lens pointed at Verily's dead body. Her lifeless, unblinking eyes stare back. Hello? 911? Sam, out of the camera's eye, says. A man is shooting at us. We're at 313 Inverness Avenue in Kingston. Hurry, I think 3 people are dead already. Editor's note. The video from this point is an unedited blur of chaos, with the camera shaking and dropping out of focus. Samantha Thompson has dropped the camera, sought cover, calling 911 on her phone. We can see the camera where Ted is thrown, Elaine to the ground, and is shielding her with his own body. We hear J.D. Thompson, who is operating the mic boom and light bar, throw them at the assailant. The man, later identified as Harold John Gilman II, is in the midst of reloading his shotgun and becomes tangled up in the wires and aluminum of the boom. We see the shotgun shells in Gimlin's hands fall to the floor and roll in front of Verily's face. We hear J.D. charge Gimlin, knocking him down, further entangling the aggressor. And during this moment, J.D. wrests the shotgun from Harold's hands and strikes him in the temple with the weapon's stock. The blow knocks Gimlin out, ending the ordeal. For now. We hear sirens in the background, growing louder, and red and white lights blink in the distance. A hard edit follows. Ernie. 5th sponsor break. The camera is focused on Ted and Elaine Buffett. Both of them are angry. I wonder why. They knew what they were doing, Elaine says. Selling Gimlin, Ivania's son, giving up for adoption, the tinctures and potions he used to adopt these children, playing stupid all these years, pretending they couldn't hear the pleas of Gimlin's alleged victims, all because of his relationship to the sisters. The Caspers are lucky they're dead, and Gimlin is lucky spectral evidence is inadmissible in court. But there's enough to use against him with the murders of the Katzberg sisters, his kin and aloof accomplices. Enough to put him behind bars for life. JD's narration picks up from here. And this concludes our visit to 313 Inverness Ave. The world-famous parahunters are staying in Ulster County, New York, next week, loyal viewers, as we visit the Balloon Boy murder house in an episode you do not want to miss. The image of the Patrick Dermody, the Balloon Boy killer used in the opening credits, comes into view as the camera pans back. We see him standing in his jail cell, staring blankly at a flickering closed-circuit television embedded in the wall behind a Lexan protective screen. The production credits of the world-famous Parahunters television program roll over this image to end the episode. And what of this reporter? How has watching this last episode affected me? The professional in me believes my viewing to be cathartic, but the human being that I am knows it's a matricide snuff film, more frightening than any edition of the Faces of Death franchise. Should this ever be made available for the general public consumption? I'm afraid this is a question I can't answer. Now, with that being said, would I publish the footage on True Creepy Stories? I don't think that's necessary. The world is full of horrors, both natural and supernatural. Maybe keeping one that seems a little bit both under lock and key, away from the eyes of the innocent, isn't a bad idea. Now, next week on True Creepy Stories, I'll fill you in on what I've learned about the recent series of mysterious murders in Fenton, New York. Until then, this is multiple award-winning reporter Ernie Carson saying, "Take 30." It's signing off. And there you go.
Hell
The
yeah, man. I
weird.
love that.
I just love those characters.
Yeah, I love the framing device you used too, like having it be like a TV episode.
Yep. And right now, one of the last year I did a series of chapbooks that were stories that either had been previously published or hadn't been published yet that I sold exclusively at convention appearances. And I made a lot of lucrative money off them. I'm just gonna say that. So I'm gonna do another series this summer, in spring and fall. Focus though all of them on the Parahunters. And it's
Oh,
gonna be
sweet.
a series of stories written in that format. This was suggested that I do this by R.J. Rolls, and I decided to take that ball and roll with it. And the first story in that series is going to be called "The First Girl." I am finishing that story this week, and it's about a serial killer who is haunted by his first victim.
Ooh.
Yeah, and she may or may not be the reason that he continues to kill.
Was RJ the editor of this anthology?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Show us that cover.
yes,
There we go.
harvested. I think Jag did the cover. Or did I think it was Jag in it?
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, they didn't. You didn't put it in the credits in the beginning. Oh yeah, the Jason Dickey's in this. Jay Mazer, me, RJ, Angelique Jordana, Meg Stockton, Mike Edenbach, Lisa Vasquez, Colt Skinner, Rain Havoc, Lance Dale, Eric Butler, Cindy Shiv, Stephanie Schism, M. Betterelli. That's somebody I don't know, but yeah. Oh, back of the page, back of the book. It tells us who did the cover. Yeah, it's Jagannath Menica.
Nice.
Yeah. He did the cover for the Bradanomicons,
Oh yeah, yeah.
the books for Brad Tierney. So
Nice.
any other questions?
Um, I don't know. If anybody has any questions, just type them below. We'll get to them right after my reading. All right, I'm gonna take over here. So the story I'm reading today is fairly short. It's short and sweet. It's about a young boy trying to capture a demon with a trash bag.
Like he's a firefly?
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, so trash day. Edgar watched the sight from his patio across the street. A young boy, only 7 years old, playing happily with an empty trash bag. The boy ran across the front yard with the open bag held overhead, gathering air before swooping down and clasping the end of the bag shut to trap the air inside. Stranger yet, the boy then held the air filled bag in front of him and spoke to it for several moments, as if interrogating it. Poor child, Edgar thought. The boy, Timothy Fox, had just lost his mother a few weeks ago. She'd been found in an alleyway downtown between a movie theater and a Chinese diner, stabbed several times in the abdomen. Edgar wasn't sure how much the boy knew about his mother's untimely death. He prayed that what he was currently watching was the sweet naivety of a child playing while the cruel world moved on around him. And then there was the father, Gregory. He'd hardly spoken a word since his wife's tragic passing. From what Edgar heard, old Gregory had found solace at the bottom of a bottle. Greg had never deserved his wife, Lila. In Edgar's opinion, he didn't deserve to be a father to poor Timothy either. The fact that he and Lila had ever married was just a misstep in the universe, a misstep that had needed correcting. That was why Edgar had decided to kill Lila. Edgar sipped his afternoon iced tea while watching the boy play. Too bad he wasn't Timothy's father. If he were, the boy would be playing with a football rather than an empty trash bag. He'd given Lila the opportunity to change things, to leave her husband and be with him instead. The foolish woman had only screamed at the sight of the knife. Mr. Wright, Timothy shouted, running across the street without bothering to look both ways. He held the air-filled bag at his side. Hey, little buddy, Edgar said, all smiles. What are you up to? You playing parachute with that bag? No, Timothy said. I'm catching demons. Oh? Edgar said, frowning. Strange boy indeed. Now, why would you want to go catching those for? Why not catch angels? Timothy laughed. Angels aren't real, Mr. Wright. You know that. Ah. Edgar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The boy needed some guidance, that was for sure. If he kept up this talk about angels and demons, he was bound to turn into some sort of creep as he got older. Would you like something to drink? Edgar asked. I've got Coke in the house. Let's pop one open and chat for a while, shall we? Timothy shook his head. I can't stay long, he said. He held the air-filled trash bag up. But my new friend told me to come and see you. Did he now? Edgar feigned interest in the bag, leaning forward to inspect it. It doesn't look like a real friend, though. Shouldn't you be out playing catch with other boys your age? Timothy shook his head. I don't really have other friends, but Kirian told me that human friends aren't worth much. He said they'll all stab me in the back. Oh, my, Edgar said, frowning deeper. Now, where did you hear that? Is that something your daddy told you lately? Timothy held up the bag. Kirian told me. He also told me he was a friend of my mom's. She visits me some nights while I'm in bed. She's the one who told me to find Kirian for help. Edgar shook his head. The boy had a real imagination in him, that was for sure. Are you sure you don't want a soda, bud? He asked. Maybe you'd like to play catch with me for a while. How about that? I have an extra mitt inside if you need one. The boy didn't appear to be listening. He had his ear to the bag as if listening to someone speaking from within. Then he took a sudden step backward and looked at Edgar with alarm in his eyes. Kirian said not to trust you, he said. He says you're a bad man who's done really bad things. What's he talking about, Mr. Wright? Edgar stared at the bag, dumbfounded. He says you know something about what happened to my mom, Timothy continued. What's he talking about? Listen, Edgar said, standing up. Demons aren't real, Timothy. You need to stop this odd behavior right now, or I'm going to have to sit down with your father. You don't want that, do you? Timothy put his ear to the bag again, then smiled wide. God, he had his mother's sweet smile. She'd been smiling to herself on her way to her car after work when Edgar had taken her into the alleyway. Kirian said he wants to meet you, Timothy said. He says he has a special surprise for you. That's enough, Edgar said, frustrated now. Go home, Timothy. I won't have you on my porch talking nonsense. Timothy held the trash bag toward him. Just look inside. Kirian promises he won't bite. Mom says demons always keep their promises when they're friends. Get that away from me, Edgar said. He didn't know why he was so flustered all of a sudden. It was just a stupid bag. You need friends, Timothy. I know the last few weeks have been difficult for you and your dad, but this needs to stop. Timothy frowned. He lowered the bag to his side as his shoulders slackened. You won't even look inside just for a second? No. But Kirian really wants to meet you. He says he knows where you're going soon, and he wants to give you a free tour. Get out of here, Edgar said, shooing the boy away. Come back when you've got some sense in you. I won't listen to all this foolish talk. Timothy stared at his angry neighbor, tears now brimming in his eyes. Then he put his ear to the bag one final time. All right, Mr. Wright, he said sadly, tying the top of the bag. I thought we were friends, even if you're a bad man who's done bad things. I'll go home and won't ever bother you again. I'll leave Kirian here, though, in case you change your mind. Edgar put a hand to his face, exasperated. Just go, Timothy, he said. And tell your dad to lay off the booze and start doing some damn parenting. Okay, Mr. Wright, Timothy said. He set the bag down on the porch next to Edgar's chair. Goodbye. Edgar watched, hands on his hips, as the boy sadly walked back home. He watched the boy go inside while picturing Gregory half asleep on the couch, surrounded by a collection of empty beer cans. What a lousy parent. Another mistake made by the universe. Perhaps it was another mistake Edgar would need to correct soon. Maybe little Timothy would fare better in a foster system. Silly kid, he mumbled to himself. He looked down at the air-filled trash bag, ruminating on what a waste of resources it was. He let the air out and stored it under his sink with the others. Noticing the blinds across the street, he offered a half-hearted wave as Timothy stared back at him. He saw someone else standing behind Timothy, someone with long black hair and a face lost in the shadows. He supposed Greg had moved on after all. The man must have a type, too. The figure's long black hair made him think of Lila. A shiver ran through Edgar's body for reasons he couldn't distinguish. Demons, he scoffed. Picking up the empty bag, he repeated two words under his breath. Silly kid. He untied the top of the bag, intending to let the air out. But it wasn't air that rushed up at his face when he squeezed the bag. The world seemed to disappear around him as his vision became blurred and fuzzy around the edges. Suddenly, his skin burned as if a flame were held to his bare flesh. The last thing he saw as a pair of clawed hands seized his head was a twin glow of red eyes and a lipless mouth filled with hundreds of razor blade teeth. He didn't even have time to scream before he was pulled headfirst into the bag. The end. There we go. Nice and short for you. Looks like we got a question here from Gabby.
Yeah, she says, this may seem like a silly question, and you don't have to answer it, obviously. Um, but does the content you write ever impact your mental health positively or negatively, especially if the content feels more real to you? And I was starting to reply to her. With me, just the act of writing puts a structure and a framework into my life, which that alone kind of like helps you out mentally in a positive manner. And then being able to excise from yourself this negativity from what things that horrible people do in your fiction is also refreshing. So, and also, and add to that too, that sometimes we bleed on our sleeve. So we write about things that happen to us, and talking about that in this manner is also healthy. So overall, Gabby, I'm going to say that writing and writing this kind of material is probably one of the most therapeutic things that I have ever done in my fucking life. Chase?
I would agree with everything you just said. It's funny because, like, as you're growing up and writing this stuff, as you're like a younger kid, which I imagine you were probably a writer as you grew up, your parents would say stuff like, if you're going to write horror, it's going to impact you. It's going to give you bad dreams. It's going to make you, depressed and just feel worse about the world. But it is the exact opposite, whereby just the act of doing, like you said, and just writing and getting all of it out of you onto a page, that's such a positive thing. And I don't think it's had any negative impact on me at all, not mentally, maybe physically, because I write everything longhand. So,
You do? I can't.
yeah,
When I say I'm a sculptor of words, literally, I'm a sculptor of words. I'm constantly rewriting and editing as I write.
I see. At my first draft, I always have to do it longhand, whether it's like a long ass novel or a short story.
I
That
can't.
way, you have to just scratch stuff out, but it makes you think more about every word you're putting down on the page. That's why I do it. Like, it really forces you to edit before you even write.
I've done my time getting that black streak on this hand here.
Yeah.
From writing longhand, and I will no longer do it unless I absolutely freaking have to.
Oop.
Mary, you got any questions for us? Do you have a ritual when you finish a manuscript, something special you do when you're done? Yeah, I go to Texas Longhorn and I get a sirloin steak and a lobster tail.
I don't really have much of a ritual. I usually go out for a drink, just like a congratulations, because I know that selfishly the real work is just beginning once you finish your first draft. Like that's the fun part is the first draft for me. After that, it's all work. It's like having homework every night.
I see my draft is my draft because I constantly edit as I write. I know you're not supposed to do that. And I do kind of word vomit what I want to do in my notes. But that's the only outline that I really use. I'm a combination pantser and outliner because of that. And what I write on the notes, 9 times out of 10, I don't do it. I don't, because I either the characters take me in a different direction with their motivations, or I think of something cooler.
Yeah. There was a tradition I had for a while where after I would finish a first draft, I would go out for like a nice steak, like you said, Longhorn. I would like prepare myself a meal, like Hannibal Lecter style, you know, like, all fancy and shit.
Oh, did it involve a saw and a friend with a razor blade and cutting the top of their head off?
With what was that, Ray Liotta?
Yeah.
No, he was not involved, sadly. He passed last year, didn't he?
I think so.
So sad. I liked him.
Carl Weathers passed today, and so did the guitar player from MC5.
Oh man, losing everybody. It's like 2016 all over again.
No, no, it's everybody's freaking old, dude. Come on. And they're getting older.
We all go someday, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. What movie's terrible? What movie were we talking about? She said it's terrible.
Oh, Hannibal.
Hannibal? Yeah, the TV show Hannibal is brilliant. And I can't remember who gets to eat the brain in the adaptation that was in the Hannibal TV show. Because whether people realize it or not, the Hannibal TV show reimagined all of the Thomas Harris books,
Mhm.
except Silence of the Lambs, because they couldn't get the rights to do Clarice, and they wanted to do Clarice.
They're saying for season four, if they can get season four greenlit, they're actually gonna bring her in.
That's why they wanted to do it. And the Clarice show sucked. So
They had a show. I didn't
that's
even know
why they
that
didn't give them
existed.
rights because they were making their own show.
Oh man. Yeah, I
And
would
it was
agree.
awful.
I would agree the movie Hannibal leaves something to be desired because it's not nearly as good as the book. Because the ending of the book is way different than the ending of the show or the ending of the movie. Like I think at the end of the book, spoiler alert, well, I don't want to spoil it, but
Hannibal gets away with everything and everything.
yeah. So Mary, you've read it, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you by saying it. Like Hannibal and Clarice, don't they run off together?
Well, yeah. And even in the show when in the climax of the show when it's metaphorically the same thing when Will takes Hannibal and pulls him off the cliff with him.
Yeah.
It's metaphorically the same thing. I like the fact that at least they were cognizant enough to wrap the storyline up with that because there is closure with the seasons that we got of Hannibal. I would though like to see the Silence of the Lambs adapted though with Fuller charge, and I also want to see another season of Mindhunter too.
Mindhunter, I think they filmed that around where I'm at in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
It's either
there's been
Ohio or Pittsburgh.
right now the best television show out there is Masters of the Air. If you're not watching Masters of the Air, correct that problem.
I haven't heard of
Um,
that.
it's Band of Brothers with B-17s, dude.
Where's it at?
It's World War II. It's on Apple Plus, and
Apple
it's
Plus. That's one streaming service I never actually got.
that's the best streaming service out there. Best shows are on it. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, just for example. C with Jason Momoa. Ladies, Jason Momoa's got a show on Apple Plus. Okay, well, I'll get it. There we go. See, problem solved. Okay.
Funny story, real quick. I actually got to literally bump into Jason Momoa several times when I was an extra in a movie. It was the movie Sweet Girl. And I was sitting in an auditorium all day long, waiting to be an extra, you know, waiting to be used. The guy comes in near the end of the night and says, "You follow me." So I follow him. He takes me into the stage where everyone's all set up. And he says, "You're going to stand right here. When I give you the cue, you're going to walk that way." And I was like, okay, that sounds easy enough. And they bring in Jason Momoa, who's just off to the side playing bass between takes. Like he's the coolest dude ever. And he stands like in front of me, like 10 feet away. And I'm just facing him the entire time over and over again, just bumping into him every take. And he's a big guy. Like he's just as tall and muscular as you would think. So it was like intimidating for several reasons. I was like, I know you, but I can't say that because it's immature. That's unprofessional. But yeah, my final take didn't actually make it into the movie,
Oh,
unfortunately.
we've got two movie studios out here in Syracuse. We've got Ron Perlman's studios out here, and the school is out here. You guys have seen a movie on Shudder called it's the one with the mother. What the hell is the name of it? Hellbender.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that was filmed out here.
Nice.
Yeah, from the school. The family that runs it, they own the school. So it's really badass that we have a lot of movies that are filmed out there in this way. So I kind of live now in the media center I've always wanted to live in. It just came to me eventually because, quite honestly, the upstate New York is so beautiful,
Mhm.
and it's so diverse with the scenery. It's why I use it for my setting for my stories. There's a big city here, big city there, then you got a city in the middle of the woods like Syracuse,
Mm.
where I live.
I gotta pay a visit to New York sometime. I want to actually been to the city. Never
Yo,
been
you gotta
to
come upstate, man.
it's where all the good scenery's at, huh?
Yep, you man, yeah. Women up here, corn fed. Yeah.
Mary says, please tell me what your favorite snack is.
My
Um,
favorite snack is the snack. We call it the snack in my family. And what the snack is, okay, it's white bread cut in half, okay, with the sharpest fucking cheddar cheese you can find, put on top of it. And then you sprinkle Worcestershire sauce on it. And then you broil it and melt the cheese and lightly toast the bread. The snack.
the
My family
snack.
loves this. It's what I've eaten that since I was knee high to a grasshopper.
I think my favorite snack is probably steak. If I can just have
That's not a snack, that's
leftovers.
a meal, dude.
No, if you cut it into little strips and have leftovers, you can just kind of munch on it throughout the day. I'm on that carnivore diet. It's
Never
especially
have
good,
enough
like extra
steak.
rare. I can't eat steak that isn't rare.
No, no,
Like,
no. If you overcook steak, there's a problem.
yeah, it should be like
It
1 minute
really
maximum
is.
both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. Chicken, overcook as much as you can
Hmm.
because you don't want to catch nothing. Pork, overcook as much as you can. Just makes it more tender, if you ask me. And you don't want to catch nothing.
Yeah,
Venison, same thing. I love venison.
it's delicious.
Gabby, when I write, it gets way too real sometimes. I end up having to take a break from that particular narrative. Okay. Yeah, all right. I know this. Sobriquet a la mode. My story in Bratonomicon 2 and in Moral Dilemmas almost made me stop writing splatterpunk. When I finished the first draft of that, and this was before the Elaine character was added to the story. Um, yes, I know you do, Mary. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. And it's Elaine that makes that story work, actually. Um, because she adds art to it. But everybody told me that I was holding back in the story. I'm like, I'm already nauseous thinking about the things that I'm writing in first person of somebody doing in this. All right. It's already disturbing me. This may be a kind of antithesis to what we were talking about earlier, the question we answered earlier. But yeah, sometimes some of the stuff we write about is vile. And this is
Hmm.
vile. I don't like to write extreme horror. I like to write splatterpunk. There's a difference between the two.
Hmm.
There's a difference between poop jokes and describing being a little purple with your description of blood and being a
Yeah,
little political. Right?
I think a
That's
lot
what
of what's considered
splatterpunk is.
splatterpunk now isn't actually splatterpunk. I mean,
So
people
a lot of
confuse the
people
two terms a
call
lot.
themselves splatterpunk and they're not.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it, call spade a spade.
yeah,
It is what it is, but I'm not going to disparage them from using that. Run with the ball.
it's a good
Okay.
market to be in.
You know, it's like I was talking the other day when I was on another podcast that I was on. We were discussing how the horror genre is just like heavy metal in that you have subgenres of subgenres of subgenres. Like my favorite band right now, as you guys know, is Green Lung.
Hmm.
And they are a doom folk horror, mushroom tripping, devil worshipping pagan heavy metal band. All right. And stoners
Hyphenates.
too. Okay. Right. That's what they call themselves. That's their genre. All right. Okay. And again, and even what I write is a subgenre of splatter punk, which is adding the folk horror element to it with splatter folk, making it my own thing. Um, so yeah, horror genre. So splatter punk and extreme horror could be your death metal, could be your extreme death metal, but it doesn't have to be because Anthrax is some thrash, and I think they're splatter punk as fuck, man.
Mm. There's no
You
Cannibal
know,
Corpse.
you know, Cannibal Corpse is
They're good.
extreme horror. Yeah, you equate them as they are.
Going back to Gabby's first question here, I think with my book moving through is when it really became hard to write at times because that was a very personal story. Like it was about grief and the loss of a loved one. And as I was editing it, I had just lost my little brother. So it was really, really close to home. So in situations like that, it is still very therapeutic to sit and write it. But that story really pushed me to the edge and my abilities because it was really hard at times to describe what I was feeling on the page. Even though it's therapeutic, it was really challenging. So that kind of was a hard one for me. So I would say, yeah, it does get difficult sometimes when you get close to home.
Dude, and God provides the second story in that, the third story in that is there's a scene in it where a young man is chased by a potential sexual abductor. And this is a thing that happened to me. And it haunted me for decades until I put it in that story. And I have not had a nightmare about that in 4 fucking years now. It's the best thing I ever did, putting that into fiction.
Gabby says, a lot of my writing involves the afterlife, which is where it tends to take place and tackles grief at times, especially when involving loved ones I've lost as characters. And that can get quite real.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Grief is the best, one of the best horror tropes to use. It really is, or at least motivators or problem for your antagonist or protagonist, as the cases can be. Grief, we all deal with grief poorly. Some of the best movies and TV shows over the past few years have been about grief. John Wick is all about grief and the stages of accepting death. Scarlet Witch, what's that? WandaVision
Multiverse of
TV show.
Madness.
Yeah, WandaVision, Multiverse of Madness. This is all about people dealing with grief poorly. Talk to me about a girl dealing with the death of her mother poorly. Everything that is it's all about grief. You've got, Gabby, you've got a sandbox that will make castles you can't imagine right now that you can play in. It is wonderful that you have this medium for you to be able to express it through and be able to share that with other people. And everybody has grief. So you're going to have a lot of readers and a lot of fans because they're going to be able to understand where you're coming from because
Mhm.
we've all gone through it.
That's kind of the challenging thing too, is that you will go through grief in life. Like no one gets away. I mean, unless like you pass at like a really tender age, at some point in your life, you're gonna face grief.
Your little brother is actually my second cousin.
Yeah, my brother Siler.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you say it was kind of hard at times reading moving through my first book because of the context. Yeah, I'm glad it's cool that some people picked up on that because that was, like I said, very personal and very hard story to get out there on paper into the world. But it was cathartic. So I'm really happy you enjoyed that one. And it was fun talking to you about it too.
It's you know what? Whenever I have an opportunity, when somebody asks me about my fiction and my stories or choices that I made when I wrote something, it always tickles me because I never in a million years imagined that I would write something that was interesting enough for somebody to make them think and need to want to know why or know answers to. It just blows my mind.
It's the best feeling.
It is. I am so, I'll never forget my first person to ever ask me for an autograph was Alex from Iowa. And now he's got his own book coming out, 4 years later,
That's
5
really
years later.
sweet.
It's great, man.
Yeah, it's a great
Uh,
feeling, just like knowing you've connected with somebody. I mean,
yeah,
Kevin Smith said it best. This idea came from my brain and went into your brain. He's like, it's almost like I gave birth into your head.
that is a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
It surely is.
He's a character. He's one of my favorite writers, so it's because of the things he
Mine as
says.
well. Mine as well. One of the reasons I started podcasting to begin with was because of his Fat Man Batman show.
I haven't heard of that one. I've heard of
That
Smodcast.
that was his first. That was his first side gig outside of his regular one that he did with his partner out in L.A.
So Fat
Yeah,
Man on Batman, is that all about Batman?
it was all about Batman. Him
Sweet.
talking about Batman. Him and every now and then, what's his face there from the TV show? Um, that did the art and Cacophony would I forget his name. Walt. Yeah, Walt would be on the show with him too because he drew Batman.
That's pretty sweet.
Yep. So yeah, he went through like all the episodes of the animated series, reviewing them, recapping them, talking about them, the movies themselves, discussing them. It was a really, really good podcast. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
One thing you have to watch if you have 2 hours to spare is go on YouTube and look up Batman Forever full length commentary by Kevin Smith.
Oh,
It was,
really?
yeah, it was makes it entertaining. Like I love his commentaries.
The one that I'm writing now, The First Girl, is an audio commentary transcript of a television program. That's how I'm doing it. It's the audio commentary. So it's the Buffets with Ernie Carson watching and doing the commentary on an episode of The Parahunters from 20 years ago.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that's the First Girl story.
Yeah, I think one thing I like about writing, especially, is you can use framing devices like that. You can do things that you can't do in other mediums, which
Yeah.
is really interesting about your story, like the way it was
And what's great
framed.
about this is it can translate to those other mediums really well.
Mhm.
Jason Pitts, Matt St. Pierre, just saying. This is my and
Buy the
I'm
movie
gonna say it
rights.
right here, right now. Expect there to be an indie horror convention in New York State in central New York, where I am in 2025. And it will be featuring indie horror writers and indie horror filmmakers.
That'd be nice.
And I might be running that goddamn convention.
Hell yeah. Yeah, let me
Okay.
know about it.
I'm going to let everybody know about it when it comes to fruition. But my big project this year is getting the interviews for the History of Splatterpunk podcast documentary that I'm going to be doing, The Rise and Fall and Rise of Extreme Horror. So this year, that is my major thing that I'm going to be doing at conventions. So if you're a fan of Splatterpunk, look forward to that. And if you're a writer of Splatterpunk that's watching this, look forward to me talking to you about it. What
Uh,
is Gabby saying here? As much as grief has destroyed me over the years, has inspired me to keep their memories here alive through writing. Yes.
mhm.
My dad passed away shortly before I wrote Good Boy. Um, and after when he died is when I got the idea to write Good Boy, actually. And I dedicated it to him because, he hated zombie stuff. So I wrote a zombie book for him. Strengthened my coping mechanism for me, helped me build that skill of writing further, and encouraged me to reach out to more people, especially family that I may have not otherwise reached out to. Yes, helps healing. It
Mhm.
does. Absolutely does. This is going to be my 6th year my dad's been gone now.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's the 6th. It's next week, dude. He died on Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. Tommy, you let me know if you need an extreme horror editor. It's my specialty. Yes, I know it is, Mary. Yes, I know it is.
I might need your services for a secret project coming up, Mary. So I'll keep in
Yes.
touch with you.
Yes, I made sure that Chase knew that you would probably be looking at his story for our little chat book that we have. Well, we're going to talk about that right now
Yeah,
because I
let's talk
just
about it.
placed an order for it. So I've got a story right now that's on Godless. And as you guys know, I like to do stories as chat
Godless.
books. It's got at conventions, and I talked about this earlier in the show, the series of ones that I did last year, and one of those was Dropping Karma, my story, my novelette that was on Godless and is now gone because it's in Immoral Dilemmas. And so Chase and I, since we are sharing a table together, we have put together something kind of unique that has not been seen before at any convention that I can think of. I've made chapbooks for us, each featuring a story that we've written. One is my story, Redshift, that's currently on Godless, and the other is Chase's story, Sigma. It's a new story that you guys don't know about. So the front story will be my story. And then after you're done reading my story, you flip it over, and there's Chase's story. It's a flipper book.
It's pretty sweet. I'm excited for it.
Yep. If you try to read it without flipping it, the words are upside down and backwards, and the pages are upside down.
You can try to read it like that. Maybe
Yeah,
make it more
yeah. If you can
interesting.
do it backwards like it's Memento from Christopher Nolan, good for you. Try it.
Yeah, I'm
Let
pretty
me know
excited
how
about
it
that
works.
project. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun project to see how people receive that.
Yep. Yep. We're gonna only have 50 copies with us at ArthurCon.
Oh, we only got 50?
50. That's all we're gonna have.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And we're gonna be bringing 50 of them to TBRCon too.
Hell yeah.
So
Are we
there's only
doing
be a
a,
100 of these printed, Chase. So they're gonna be limited edition, very limited edition. You can only get them at the convention appearances that you and I are at together.
are we signing and numbering them?
We can.
That'd be cool. Yeah, people
Yeah.
like that little numbering thing.
Yeah. We've got Sharpies. We can do whatever we want with the inside cover.
Could draw little stick figures and shit.
Yeah.
Before we close out, where can everybody find your work at? Do you have a website?
ThomasRClark.com.
And
I'm easily found on.
are they able to get signed copies from your website?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just you can get all my books from me directly. I have a Square store on my website. You go there, order it. Yeah, I charge shipping. Why? Because there's no such thing as fucking free shipping. Okay.
Dude, Media Mail went up again.
Yeah, it did. No offense, guys. Sorry, I charge shipping. Shit happens. Okay. If you want to get the shitty Amazon version of my books, you can get it from Amazon. If you want to get the Ingram Spark version with the paperback paper inside, like you're supposed to have in a book, get it from me, okay? Or buy it at Walmart. You can get it at Books A Million, anywhere you can get this book.
Hell yeah.
If you want it
As for
signed,
me,
you get it from me on my Square store. I'll sign it for you and send it to you with some swag.
swag is expensive too. I'm learning that.
Not if you have friends with a press
I
with the there's that cricket thing.
oh yeah, it's kind of make it yourself.
Yeah, they make them themselves, and there's all you gotta do is pay for the material.
As for me, if you want to find my work, you can find it at chasewill.bigcartel.com. You can get signed copies there. And of course, if you want to follow me, the Family of Fright Night Horror podcast is on Spotify, it's on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, and just about anywhere else you can get your podcasts at.
Excellent.
So, closing out, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you're watching this on YouTube, we know you have several options of what to watch, and we are really happy you chose to watch our video. So, thank you so much. And guys came in for the live session. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
And we will
closing
see
out.
you guys at AuthorCon 3
See
in
you there,
April.
everybody.